Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be on something that I have been wanting to make a video on for the longest time. I've actually attempted to film this video many times now, and every time was a fail because I either felt like I was saying too much or going off on tangents, or I felt like I wasn't saying enough. So in this, I realized that I just do not have all the time to say my full testimony here on YouTube in one video. So I'm thinking of breaking it up into parts. Today's video is mainly going to be specifically on when I decided to stay Catholic, like what point in my life I chose to say, yes, I am Catholic, and I am very convicted that this is the truth. And even though I am nowhere near perfection, I know that I am in the church that Christ established. So with that said, my name is Adriana, Adventurous Catholic, and today we will be talking a little bit about my testimony. Let us get started. Alright, so because this video is on a personal testimony of mine, I just want to jump right into it. So I was blessed enough to be born into a Catholic family. My mom and dad also both come from Catholic families. They got married and they had 4 of us, my 3 brothers and myself, so I am the only girl. We were brought up in the Catholic Church. We got baptized as infants, and then we had our first communion, and then eventually our confirmation when we were in high school. So it kind of seemed like a typical Catholic family that was being raised in the faith. My dad was very good at instilling in us the importance of going to Mass every Sunday and praying the rosary every day as a family. And to be honest, I really believe that is the reason why we are all Catholic still, because my dad had this faith in going to Mass and in praying the rosary together as a family every day. And even if there were challenges in the way, God was listening to my father's prayers and everything that was in his heart as we would pray the rosary every day. And that is what keeps us as a family united. So other than that, my mom was the one that was into retreats more. She would take us to the prayer group that our parish held every Monday for families. So we were brought up in this environment at our parish, which is a Novus Ordo parish. If you are not familiar with the term Novus Ordo, it is the Mass that Catholics attend. Mass has been like this since the 1960s when the Second Vatican Council was established. So if you've ever gone to a Catholic Mass and the priest is facing the people and he is speaking in the language that the people speak there, for example, English or Spanish or whatever language belongs to that country, then that is a Novus Ordo Mass. And that is different from the way Mass was celebrated before the 1960s. It was celebrated in Latin with the priest not facing the people, so he was having his back to the people and he was facing the altar and he was facing the crucifix, and communion was given only on the tongue. So those differences happened because of the Second Vatican Council. So I'm just giving that quick explanation just in case you aren't familiar with the terms, since I may be using them throughout this video. So I was brought up going to Novus Ordo Mass, and I can say that overall I enjoyed it. I mean, that's what I knew growing up and it was beautiful. However, there was a little bit of a disconnect because there were times where I would hear, for example, testimonies of people who had these radical conversions to the faith. They were probably like into drugs before, or into alcoholism, or different addictions that exist out in the world, sexual addictions as well. People who were really involved in a lot of things that I wasn't really being exposed to growing up. And then they had this huge conversion where God really spoke to them and manifested himself in their lives, and they turned to God and they came back to the church. So growing up, I sort of felt different from other people because I didn't feel like I was doing what they were doing, and I kind of felt like I might have needed to have this crazy radical conversion story so that I can give my own story, and I didn't really know what story to give because I didn't have any like trauma or anything too crazy before high school. However, I was missing the point. The point wasn't that I had to be a leader in church, because that's what I was getting. I felt like everybody that was Catholic had to eventually be a leader in the church. If not, then you weren't really Catholic. And that's where I was missing the point, because that is not our goal in life. Our goal in life isn't to be a leader and to do these crazy changes in the world. Though some people may definitely be called to that, we are all called to be saints. And that's something that I didn't understand yet. My mindset was very limited on this world and thinking, well, I have to make a difference here in this world. And I feel like I can't because I don't have this crazy story. And like I said, I was missing the point. The point was that we're all called to be saints, and I didn't know that until I started to have a faith formation. And this faith formation started when I was in high school. My confirmation teacher, in case you may know him, was Jesse Romero. So if you're in the United States, West United States, you may have heard of him before. He is an author, an evangelist, and he has his own radio program. So I will link that below in case you want to hear from him. He's really good. And I think that's really where my desires to know the truth really started, because he just explained everything the way that it is without watering it down, without sugarcoating it. He gave us a lot of truths of the church, like what the church actually teaches about various different controversial topics that are out there in the world. And it really made me start to think as a high schooler growing up and just wanting to follow God. I wanted to know more, and that definitely gave me a really strong dose of Catholicism, we can say, and as well as a congregation of religious sisters that my mom got to know about right after I did my confirmation. That my mom got to know these religious sisters, a congregation called the Port Clare Missionary Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. And they held this group every week that would go and they would hear topics from the sisters about the faith. So my brothers and I started going, and this is where things changed just a little bit for me. Towards the end of my high school journey and the beginning of my college journey, there was a time where I started to doubt. I started to doubt my faith. And I started to really wonder if I'm in the right place, if the Catholic Church has the truth or not, because I was starting to hear a lot of different controversial topics be brought up, and people with really good arguments approach me and say, well, hey, did you know Catholics worship saints? Did you know the Catholics worship Mary and the Bible teaches us not to? That was one of the many examples. Another one was, did you know that the rosary is vain repetition and the Bible warns us against vain repetition? And so I was being approached, like I said, by these people who came with arguments that I had never heard of before, that I had never been introduced to before, and I was starting to think about them in a different perspective. And aside from that, I had some of my closest cousins leave the Catholic faith and they were converting to Protestantism, and that was very hard for me because these were cousins that I grew up with and I love them so much, and I still do love them very much, and I look up to them in various ways. So when they left the church, that honestly really got to me, and that made me think even more. It made me really wonder, am I in the right place, or is there a truth elsewhere that I need to go seek? And in the beginning of college, right, off on this new journey in this new place with people that I didn't know, people that I was unfamiliar with, there were a lot of clubs on campus that were Protestant, right? So in case you've never heard of the term Protestant, it just means someone who's Christian but not Catholic, because Catholics are also Christian. So I encountered also these people at college who would ask me these various questions that, like I said, I hadn't heard of before, and I was starting to learn from them a little bit, and I was starting to wonder, am I in the right place? And so, I mean, where else can I go but to prayer, right? I need to ask God. I need to tell him to give me a sign or to give me an experience or to do something, because I need to know the truth. And it was like this desperate desire in me. So the sisters that I was telling you guys about through the group, they were talking to us about World Youth Day. World Youth Day was coming up in 2016. It was going to be in Poland, and they were just so excited, and there was just excitement and joy from these sisters and the other youth that were going to that group that we were attending as well. and they were all talking about this World Youth Day. Oh, you have to go, you have to sign up for it. The Pope leads it. And I was just like, whoa, this is a lot. Like, I'm gonna leave the country, I'm gonna go to Poland. I've never left the country before. And inside my heart, I just knew that I wanted to know something, and I felt that this was going to lead me somewhere. And as soon as they told me that we're also going to Rome and to the Holy Land, which is in Israel where Jesus lived, I automatically said, sign me up, I want to go. And I started raising money, and I started putting money aside so that I can go. And my older brother and I, we were the only two above 18. My younger brothers weren't there yet, so they weren't able to go. And we were both like, we're going. And we went together with a group of about 50 young adults. And that was just from the people that knew these sisters. So you can imagine how many other people went from the United States and from other parts of the world. There were over 3 million young adults or youth present at World Youth Day 2016 in Poland. And that was such an incredible experience. So first we went to the Holy Land, which is where, like I said, Jesus lived. So this is where he was born, grew up, and died. And we got to see a lot of very important places, like the place where he was born. We went to the Sea of Galilee. We had mass in a boat that was actually a replica of the boat that Jesus would go on when he was in the Sea of Galilee. So it wasn't the same boat, but it was a replica of it. So we had mass celebrated in that boat, and that was honestly the first experience that changed my life entirely. We were there, and after we received Jesus in the Eucharist, I looked out at the water that was just like all in front of me, and I just didn't want to see anybody else. I just wanted to have a moment with God. My family was going through a very rough time during this time especially, and that I think added to those challenges and doubts that my brothers and I were facing at the time. And I just needed to have an answer. Like, I needed to know why, and I needed to know that God was actually there. And when I looked out into the ocean, I honestly felt that. It was just this very strong answer in my heart that told me that Jesus was there. I knew the Holy Spirit was right there, present at that time, and he let me know that everything was going to be fine. At that moment, that was exactly what I needed. And I was crying. I was so emotional. I was just in tears, and I just couldn't believe it. I really felt this strong peace that I had never felt in my entire life growing up. I had never felt a peace so strong as I did right there in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, in this country that was currently at war with Palestine. There was a war going on when we were there, and that was the most peaceful peace I've ever felt in my heart. And at that moment, I just knew that there was something right about where I was. I knew that I was in the right place, and I felt like I couldn't doubt anymore. And I know that that was a grace from God that he gave me at that moment. So after that happened, we continued with the rest of the Holy Land, which was just like blessings upon blessings. We went to various places where Jesus preached. We went to the Sermon on the Mount. We renewed our baptism at the Jordan River where Jesus was baptized. We went to the sepulcher where Jesus was buried, and there was the empty tomb. So we got to see the empty tomb. I mean, it was incredible. And I could go on and on about this story, but I would spend all the time talking about just that. So that was just so incredible. And I left Holy Land, like I said, knowing that I was in the right place. And I just felt in my heart, like, how could anybody doubt Jesus, first and foremost? And then secondly, how could anybody doubt the church? This is what Jesus Christ established. And from there, we went to Rome, which is another beautiful treasure that the church has. So Rome, as you may know, used to be pagan. I mean, they were very pagan. They believed in many gods, and it wasn't until the apostles went to evangelize there and converted the people there that they ended up converting to Christianity. We got to see the Vatican, which is where the Pope lives, and the largest church in the entire world, by the way. And so we got to just see a lot of places there, and it was beautiful. The architecture, I mean, I felt like I was in a movie. But aside from that, it was just such a church treasure, like I said, and it was so overwhelming because we had gone to Holy Land, which was very different in terms of how it looked, very poor, very humble. And then we see Rome, very beautiful, and this art that cannot be found anywhere else in the world. It's right there. And so that just added to my conviction that, wow, I can't believe that I belong to the Catholic Church. What an honor, what a privilege, and such a rich history do we have. I've been drinking a gallon of water every day, and I'm a little bit behind because it's almost 3 and I'm at the 1 p.m. mark, but I will get there. So anyways, like I was saying, finally we went to Poland for the rest of the days, which was World Youth Day. I think it was like 5 days, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot, this was a few years ago. But yeah, so we were there, and after we had gone to Holy Land in Rome, I thought I couldn't experience anything more beautiful, and I was wrong, because World Youth Day was a whole different experience on a whole nother level. I can't say that it was better, but I don't know. To this day, I struggle with remembering which one was my favorite. All 3 countries were beautiful in a very unique way because they're very different. So Poland was an experience that we had with about 3 million other youth and young adults around the world. So, I mean, everywhere we went, we saw other Catholics who were part of World Youth Day, because in a sense, the whole city turns into World Youth Day. Everybody walking around is part of World Youth Day. If they don't want to be part of World Youth Day, then they would have left, because they would know that the city was going to be flooded with Catholics that week. And we also got the blessing to go to the concentration camps in Auschwitz and Auschwitz-Birkenau. So those are the 2 concentration camps there. And it was just so amazing to get to know more about the Holocaust and know what the Jews suffered through during that time, because that was definitely a very difficult time that they were going through. And so we actually had a mass celebrated in, I believe it was Auschwitz-Birkenau. They have a Catholic church established there, and the priest that took us had mass there for us, and that was such an incredible experience. During this trip, I was just getting these affirmations from God, just telling me to trust him more with my life. And we were learning so much from the priest and from the sisters that joined us as well. Some of the sisters came along with us, and we were just learning so much about our faith during this time, obviously. But during this mass, I really felt this pull that was very unique, very different from anything else that I had felt during the whole trip. It was this call to just belong entirely to God and to let everything go to him and to do his will. And that's what I didn't understand back then, because I always wanted to do my will, because I knew that we all had free will, the freedom to make choices of our own. And I didn't understand that we could have a different will than God's will. I thought that it was all the same thing, but it isn't. God has a purpose for our life, and he has desires for us, but it is when we get to know him more that we're able to follow those desires and to unite our will with God's will. Because if we don't look for God's will, then we'll just be following our own will, and that will only lead us to damnation. And so during that mass, there was just this very strong call that I had in my heart. I knew it was a call to surrender everything that I had, my family, my boyfriend at the time, because I had a boyfriend during this time that was waiting for me back in the USA, and I had all of these friends, and it was just so hard for me to mentally let them go, to think that I wouldn't be their friends anymore, or I wouldn't have a boyfriend anymore. But it was really during this mass that I was able to surrender mentally, emotionally, spiritually, everything to God. And that is really where I can say my conversion happened. And no, it wasn't like a conversion from one faith to Catholicism. It was me still being Catholic always, but this moment in my heart that I had to make my faith my own. And it was something that every single person experiences at some point in their faith journey. Everybody. Whether you have experienced it or not yet, you're going to experience it at some point in your life. This moment where you can no longer be Catholic, or you can no longer follow the teachings that your parents taught you growing up because of the fact that they taught you it. You have to follow it because you willingly want to. So I know that that was a moment for me that allowed me to really choose God fully and say yes to something that I didn't know. Yes to the future that I had no clue what it would bring. Yes to this roller coaster ride that I had no idea what it was gonna feel like. I just had to say yes to God. And that was honestly the moment that I felt so much more freedom than I've ever felt in my entire life, when I said yes to God. And what I find most incredible out of this whole thing, or fascinating, was that it had to happen to me outside of the country. And that shouldn't have been the case. That shouldn't be the case with anybody, because God is everywhere. He is not only in Poland, he's not only in the Holy Land, he's not only in Rome, he is everywhere. He is right here, right where you are watching this. He's right next to you, and you probably don't notice it if you are always on your device, or if you are always trying to fill your desires with other things. You don't notice. Sometimes we don't notice that God is right here with us. So it was just amazing, because yes, that is how I think God called me really strongly into the faith, into the Catholic faith. But for everybody it happens very differently. And I want to continue to share more about my testimony, because I know that there's just so much to it. This was only the beginning. This was only up to the point when I decided to make my faith my own, when I decided to stay Catholic. But then there was so much after that, and I will be sharing that in further videos. If you have any other questions, anything that you're wondering about me, please let me know in the comments, because that'll help me to know what to say next time, to include certain events or experiences that I had in my faith journey, because like I said, my testimony just has so many bits and pieces, and I think every person's testimony does. Your testimony can't just be one story. Your testimony continues to grow as you continue to grow. So in that same way, I feel this is only part one of my life, of my faith journey, and there was so much more that happened after that, and that continues to happen, and I'm excited to share all of that with you. So with that said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. God bless you all. Stay faithful, my friends, and I will see you all next week.